Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Finding Enoch, where we take a deep dive into the mysteries of our planet, ancient discoveries, secret knowledge, life on other worlds, life under our own world, within it, and life beyond the veil. Today we're going to go into the topic of OOPArts, out-of-place artifacts. Got to give a lot of credit to Dr. Michael Cremo for the vast amount of research that man did to bring these things to light. He spent most of his adult life researching these objects and artifacts found around the world by everything from miners to farmers to hikers, campers, loggers, you name it. Somebody found something interesting in the earth, especially deep within the earth, and it looked man-made or like it was made intelligently. Michael Cremo made sure to document these things. And he got a lot of flack for it, but he also got a lot of support for it. I'm one of the supporters, for sure. So I'm going to go through a little list of some of these OOPArts and give my take on possibilities. He's got a book, 900 pages of artifacts like this. They're not acknowledged by the Smithsonian, like anybody trusts the Smithsonian. See, the thing in the Smithsonian Institute is like NASA. It reminds me of the UNESCO World Heritage Foundation. Everybody claims to be the expert on these sites around the world, and then they lock them down. They don't allow any other research. They don't allow anybody to look beyond what they've found. There's a story about the Temple Mount, or the Western Wall, where a couple of rabbis had discovered a tunnel, and they went down this tunnel and removed a couple of bricks or part of this wall far into this tunnel, and they discovered a room, a chamber, and inside that chamber it looked to be something that they thought might be the Ark of the Covenant, which makes sense, I mean, due to the location, right? And that's something that a lot of people have been looking for forever, for generations, right? And what happened was, I believe the government took over that site and then blocked off that wall before anybody, I'm sure somebody went in there. Some head honcho, like a Zahi Hawass in Egypt, did the same thing in Jerusalem. And they keep that information for themselves and their little circle of people. And then the rest of us are always left to wonder. I think a lot of us agree that it's extremely annoying. It's just the frustration that makes me want to keep going with this research and kind of put it out there. I know a lot of YouTubers have already talked about these things. I'm going to try to pop them up on screen while I'm talking. But let's go ahead and start off with the Baghdad Battery, clay jars with asphalt stoppers and iron rods, and they were made some 2,000 years ago. They've been proven capable of generating more than a volt of electricity, and these ancient batteries were found by German archaeologist Wilhelm Koing in 1938 just outside of Baghdad, Iraq. There's people that have remade these things, they've tested them, they actually work. So that's another example of us not giving enough credit where it's due to our ancient ancestors, our predecessors. And I've always thought about this, you know, like humanity, our version of humanity, the modern age, for the last, few hundred years, a couple thousand years, we've been going in a certain trajectory towards our technology. We've got the iPhone, we've got cars and trucks, we've got airplanes, we've got, computers and satellites, and we've gone in that direction. But some of these civilizations before us were around for thousands of years in a civilization, and they went in a different direction. They were studying the stars, they were studying the universe from their perspective without the use of technology, but they had mathematics, they had geometry, and there's a lot of numbers. Like if you look at the Great Pyramid and you look at the numbers included, I think the base of the Great Pyramid is pi. How do you get that perfect? on a structure so massive, right? And the fact that there's pyramids all over the planet, sure, they look a little different. And the whole thing is they say, well, that was the easiest structure to build. It made the most sense because of its weight and density. But I don't buy that. I don't buy that. They all have a story of someone that came down and gave them knowledge, came from somewhere else. You know, you could call it God, little g. I'm a Christian, so I believe in one God, big G. But I could see how ancient peoples would believe that somebody that's got this vast amount of information or technology would seem like a god to them. Just like if you took an iPhone to a tribe in the middle of the Amazon somewhere and showed them this little black mirror that can look up anything on the planet, could show them any image they could ever dream of, or video footage that they could ever dream of, they're going to think this is magic, right? So Baghdad battery, okay, that's one of the cool ones. I'd love to talk to the people that made these things, right? The next one is like the Egyptian light bulb. You see it carved in relief on the walls in Egypt, and it looks like an eggplant. They've called it that before, but it's being held up by these cylindrical shaped pillars. They look like something modern. They look like something that would conduct electricity. They're massive. In these glyphs, people are holding them up. You know, I mean, human beings are holding them up, and they still dwarf the people, and they're connected to something. You know, you can call it a vine, sure. I've never seen an eggplant that big, have you? Just an interesting question to ask. The Great Wall of Texas. In 1852, in what is now known as Rockwall, Texas, farmers digging a well discovered what appeared to be an ancient rock wall, estimated to be some 200 to 400,000 years old. Now you have two camps. You've got the people that believe that it was a naturally formed structure. They tested the magnetism of the stones and said that they're all similar. And then other people said that there's archways and there's certain structural aspects that make it definitely look like it was man-made. Now, as far as the magnetism is concerned, doesn't magnetism transfer from one thing to the other? If I magnetize a piece of steel by holding a magnet to it, I've found, because I work with steel, that it magnetizes the steel, which will magnetize another piece of steel and another piece of steel and so on. So magnetism transfers through objects that are ferrous. So I don't know how they can test that. If I had a pile of scrap metal, just filings and stuff that were sitting on my workbench, and I held a big magnet to those filings, they all magnetize together. And if I pull that magnet away, momentarily that little pile of mild steel is magnetized. It'll still cling on to other pieces for a bit. So obviously stones that are magnetized would do the same thing. They would transfer that magnetism through each other. I'm not sure, but that's just how it seems when I'm in the shop working. 1.8 billion year old nuclear reactor. That's pretty fascinating. In 1972, a French factory imported uranium. In Africa's Gabon Republic, their uranium had already been extracted. They found the site of origin to have apparently functioned as a large-scale nuclear reactor that came into being 1.8 billion years ago and was in operation for some 500,000 years. You know, I mean, the Nobel Prize winners have said that this must be a man-made nuclear plant. That old, 1.8 billion years old, that operated for 500,000 years? Who knows? But a lot of this stuff is found very deep in the earth and in places that modern day humans have not been, okay? And I'm pretty sure a couple thousand years ago, they didn't have the capability of producing any nuclear power. It had to be something way older. If you look at what they say about the geology of the earth, and since its inception, what do they say? It's like 4 billion years old. They say that it went from a volcanic planet to an oceanic planet to an archipelago to Pangea to multi-continental. I think that's the order that they go in. It's happened multiple times. The Earth basically just turns inside out, and then it happens all over again. The volcanoes create atmosphere, the atmosphere rains down, the water is filtered out, you create this huge oceanic planet, and then suddenly you have a bunch of little islands when the water kind of dries up in certain areas, just based on the landscape. And then you have one giant continent, and then because of seismic activity, it breaks off and into multi-continents. So that's if that's happened that many times, and life was created this time around, this go around, and you've seen, based on what archaeologists say, life had been extinct and then new life formed, and some things always survive. Life always finds a way, right? So what's to say that, you know, billions of years ago, there wasn't some different creature that evolved like humanity did, that became technologically advanced and went through the same processes that we have as hominids, and evolved into something incredible, and then due to greed, lust for power, and control, just like humans are, they ended up destroying themselves and the whole planet along with them. So they found evidence of this, I think it's an isotope on Mars that kind of displays that they've gone through some kind of nuclear cataclysm in the past. So were there living intelligent beings on Mars that went to war with each other, warring powers, and they all decided to push the button at the same time, basically, just like we could, just like our stupid leaders could, and destroy the entire planet in a chain reaction of nuclear power? Possible. It's possible. You see the channels and waterways, former waterways on Mars. You know, I mean, when you think about the rover, how we sent the rover there, they always send it to the most bland, boring places, if you ask me. I'm sure they have their reasons at NASA, but you'd think that we could like throw our hat in the ring and they'd do a vote on Twitter or something, or X, and say, hey, where would you like us to go? What's one of the most fascinating places on Mars, based on, you know, you can Google Mars now and you can look at the topography of the planet. Why don't they ever go to Olympus Mons? Why don't they land up there? Why don't they go down to the bottom of the giant canyon? I think it's 11 times deeper than the Grand Canyon on our planet. Why wouldn't you fly something that's just lit up from all sides down into that canyon? Because I believe if something happened like that on that planet, perhaps civilizations, anybody that was left, went underground. And that's exactly what you see here with like Derinkuyu in Turkey. It's this huge city that could hold like 18,000 people under the ground with, it's like a labyrinth. They had livestock down there, they had granaries down there, they had doors that were so heavy you could move them basically with one hand from the inside and close them or open them, but from the outside you could not open them or close them. So this was obviously to keep, and they had air shafts and everything else. So this was obviously to hide from something or to protect yourself from something. And I don't think they found human remains down there. So that's a pretty fascinating topic in itself. I'd love to see it someday. So what's to say that that didn't happen on Mars? You know, and I just feel like if you flew down into that canyon, what if you found some kind of life form that's still able to exist in that atmosphere or lack thereof? I don't know. Once I saw the real pictures of Mars with kind of a blue sky and brown dirt, not so much red, I started to really distrust NASA. And they digitize everything. I mean, all these other galaxies and solar systems, they digitize it. When we have telescopic photos that are crystal clear. Let's move on to another part. The Piri Reis map, everybody's talked about it. It was drawn in 1513, and apparently Piri Reis used previous maps, older maps, to draw this, and they showed Antarctica. They showed the landmass, the border of Antarctica, before the ice was there. So how do you get that coastline of Antarctica when it's covered with ice? And because now we know what its actual coastline looks like because of ground penetrating radar and all this new satellite technology that we have. But back then they had nothing like that. You couldn't see through the ice. So how did these people know how to get such a precise cartography of the landmass? That doesn't make any sense. And I'm sure people have said it's a hoax or whatnot, but I'm pretty sure they've proven that that map is genuine. And boy, wouldn't you like to talk to Perry Reese and see where he got that information from. So it's just like with Atlantis. The story came from Solon. Solon, I believe he's an Egyptian, and he's the one who gave that information to the Greeks. It's very hard after so many years. You see how much they change history. The winners of war write history, right? And a lot of things are obfuscated over time. Even in our own lifetimes, we've seen the media change history, or try to. We've seen world leaders try and speak their own truth when everybody else that was a part of these conflicts around the world sees a different truth. But you only hear it from one perspective most of the time. It's sad because you'll never really know what actually happened. We don't have a time machine, so we can't go back and take a look. They thought the city of Alexandria was a farce. They thought that it was just a myth, and then they found it. So something tells me eventually we will find proof of Atlantis being real. Now Lemuria, I don't know about that one, but who knows? Who knows? I know the story of the sea people of Egypt that came and battled the Egyptians, and they came from the sea, they kicked everybody's ass, and then they took off back to the sea. But the way they described them was pretty mysterious. It didn't sound very human to me. But back then, there wasn't this contact that we have like we do on the planet now. We can talk to somebody in any country we want to right now just by using a cell phone or a computer. And back then, when you saw another culture, not only did they speak a different language, but their entire look was different. Their clothing, their boats looked different, their weapons looked different, because for hundreds, if not thousands of years, they'd been evolving on their own, and then all of a sudden you have these great conflicts. When they do run into each other, they have these wars and battles. It had to be pretty frightening, like when the Native Americans first saw the Spaniards arrive. They thought that they were gods. They had to be so tripped out with the iron armor, swords, on horseback, with beards. They looked completely different. So there's the fear factor of not knowing who these people are, with the awe of the difference in the way they looked. That must have been fascinating to live back then, and terrifying in many ways. But we only have scratched the surface, I think, with paleontology and archaeology. It's all under the dirt. And most of the time when people find these artifacts, these OOParts, they're mining deep, deep under the ground, or they're farming, like that Texas wall. How many places currently in the United States alone have we not dug down just to look at the strata to see what's going on? They test places here and there. They're testing for elements, they're miners and everything else, but you can't just scratch the whole surface off. You can't pull it up like a rug. So it takes time. And that's why I love it when mainstream archaeology and science is completely disproven. It's like Göbekli Tepe. I think if they say it's about 11,000 to 13,000 years old in Turkey, and it looks like it was purposely buried. Some say that it was called lensing. The outer walls over time fell in. That's why you find the newer layers at the bottom. If they did purposely bury that when they knew a cataclysm was coming, that undertaking, that was more material than it took to build the Great Pyramid. That's a huge undertaking. If they just did it with baskets and by hand, that it'd take a long time. So they're just finding out more and more. What they did to Easter Island, I heard that somebody put some kind of chemical on the Easter Island statues, after they had started digging them up because they realized they were a lot deeper, like 30 feet deep, and they had inscriptions carved into their backs and their bodies. And I got to give a lot of credit to other people: Randall Carlson, Richard Dolan, I mean Michael Cremo in this case. So many researchers, it's hard to name them all. I pay homage to all of those people. I'm not pretending like I'm the one who uncovered this. So if this is the first time you've ever heard of these things, it's because of those folks that I've actually caught on and wanted to research these things. Yeah, I mean, they talk about a 2,000-year-old earthquake detector from China. An earthquake struck after this thing had been developed and made, and it detected an earthquake that was 300 miles away. They didn't even know an earthquake had happened until somebody came from that area days later, weeks later, and told them what had happened. So they saw the seismic activity on this device that was made. It looks like a big vase with dragons carved on the sides of it. They saw the detection of the earthquake, but nobody felt it where they were. And then suddenly this man shows up from 300 miles away where the earthquake did happen, and he tells them this weeks later. That's pretty fascinating. And this was thousands of years ago, 132 AD. The Antikythera mechanism, it was found in the ocean. It was made by the Greeks. And I think they figured out that it was a gift for royalty, somebody in charge. And it was made by obviously a very intelligent, special person. But how did that person gain that knowledge back then? You know, I think they reconstructed it after they did x-rays of this thing because it was so corroded from being in the ocean for so long. And they remade this thing. And it's like a star chart, okay? So obviously probably tells you the solstices and everything else, like they did with stone back then. But this thing was an actual mechanism. It's just that nobody ever believed that any of this stuff could be made that long ago. And it turned out it was. What else is out there waiting for somebody to discover? And that's primarily what I want to do, is go look for these things. Specifically around mountaintops. In the ancient past, a top of a mountain was a great place for a lot of reasons. It was a great place to look at the landscape, look for an enemy, look for a warring nation on its way to you. Just a place to get your bearings, see where the forests were, see where the deserts were, where the water was. When I was younger, in my 20s, I hiked up to a place in Pecos, New Mexico. When I got to the top of this peak, I looked around, and I always look at the ground because I'm looking for Spanish treasure. I'm looking for ancient artifacts, arrowheads, spear points, you name it. I found them all. New Mexico is a great place to do that. But I get up to the top of this peak, and I'm kind of kicking dirt around, and I look down at the ground, and I find this rusted iron claw sticking out of the ground, just barely. And in the claw was it looked like I think it was probably quartz crystal. It was a ball in the hand of this claw. I thought I found Merlin's staff. You know, I thought I found something from Harry Potter. I was freaking out. So I pulled it out of the ground. The quartz crystal had shattered off, a piece of it fractured, and it was hollow on the back side of the claw, on the wrist part of it. And I couldn't believe what I found. I want to go back up there with a metal detector and actually look around some more, but it was very hard rock everywhere. And the sediment that had blown up to the top had started to bury this thing for a long time. So I looked it up. The age, you know, all you can do is Google, you know, talons and claws. What was this to? Like holding a crystal ball. I was hoping it was from like a staff, obviously, thinking magic. But it turned out to be a Spanish chair. So the Spaniards had taken a chair all the way up to this mountaintop, and it was most likely for conquistadors or royalty to scope out their land, right? That was fascinating. I think it was from like 1642. So that thing was old, and it had been up there for a long time. So that's why I say mountaintops are a great place to search for these things. Most people just go up to look around nowadays, and they hike, and that's cool. That's fun. It gets you in shape. You see some great views. But there's things up there, you know. So take a metal detector. If it's on state land or you can legally do it, take a metal detector and a little shovel. Don't send yourself on a wild goose chase, but go up and take a look, see what you can find. I'm always looking for caves up in places like that too. I can't imagine what's in like the Carpathian Mountains in Romania, to the Himalayas. There's so many places on this planet I wish I could go. The Headless Valley, that would be a beautiful place to go check out. There's stories of, all these men found decapitated, all these miners, looking for gold deposits and everything else. A long time, for many, many years, for decades this happened. So they think it was tribal people that were, kind of taking these people out as they were going up to look for treasure. But there's also stories of them going through these big locks, basically, and on canoes, and these cliffs are 1,000 feet high, and there's cave entrances all throughout these cliff faces, and things used to get thrown at these prospectors. So who lives in those caves? Like, nobody's ever gone up there to rappel down into these caves. I've never seen anything like that. So the whole point of this channel is to garner some interest. And I want to give everybody out there that doesn't have the ability to do these things, or just is fascinated by them, that's got the interest, to go with me on these journeys while I take 360-degree cameras, literally land in these places, and go on these expeditions for a couple weeks at a time and do our research. Take a geologist, take an archaeologist, a paleontologist, take scientists, take tech nerds, and we'll go out there and place technology in these places that's solar powered. We can use things like Elon Musk's Starlink, hook it up to solar power, leave it there for a while, have a stream that's live constantly to everybody. Then I'll go back when they need to be repaired or things need to be replaced. But when every single location that we go to, I want to deposit one of these pieces of technology and disguise it like a rock or a tree so we can't be frauded. It sucks that people have to make fake videos of Bigfoot and aliens now because it kind of muddies the water. It doesn't kind of, it really muddies the water. So for those of us that take it seriously, it's very hard for us to actually find out what's really going on because there's always some jackass dressing up in a Bigfoot costume. And it's just to get clicks, right? So we're not trying to do that. Finding Enoch is a channel that's designed to give power back to the people, to take it away from NASA, to take it away from UNESCO and all these places, to find our own locations. If we can find it on private land, a lot of times the corrupt governments of the world, when something awesome like this is found on a farmer or rancher's property, what do? Down in southern New Mexico, he found a Spanish treasure that was worth a couple $100 billion. And before the man had the opportunity to get it all out, the government came and snatched up his property, ruined his life. Divorce, greed, all that stuff occurred after that. So I want it to be so transparent with the public that if anybody came and tried to take it from you, you'd have millions of people saying, no, stop. The owner bought the property, they get to keep the property, and you will never touch it. Like if you found another Skinwalker Ranch or Blind Frog Ranch, the owners of those properties should get to keep them. And that's another topic, is why did billionaires like Bob Bigelow purchase places like Skinwalker Ranch to do research? Why? Why would they spend millions of dollars on sending scientists with new technology out there to go research these phenomena, the paranormal? Like that's got to tell you a little something, right? So I'm not a billionaire, I'm not a millionaire, I'm not 100,000aire, okay? But I do care about getting this stuff, this information out to the public as much as possible, because we have to protect each other now. Nobody else is coming to help us. And it's time. We all take it serious now. It's not taboo anymore. It's time for us to take back control of researching the paranormal, cryptids, all this fun stuff, UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, I don't care, Loch Ness Monster, whatever it is, it's fun. It's a great pastime. All of us are pretty interested in it. You can tell by the popularity of shows like Ancient Aliens, right? But they're going back in time. I want to do something current and give it to the future. So follow me on this, Finding Enoch. We went into a few ooh parts. There's so many more. They found what looks like wagon wheels embedded in coal, you know, miles below the surface of the earth in solid coal. There's pictures of it online. You just look it up. And Michael Cremo was one of the leaders in out-of-place artifacts and exposing this stuff. Forbidden Archaeology, look up his book. It's amazing. I still haven't got my hands on an actual copy, but I want to. Let's go on this wild goose chase together, because it doesn't belong to any individual. But for some reason, people like to scoop it up, keep it for themselves, and never show the world. There's archives all over this planet. You know, private libraries and museums that people have. And it's just a jackass move to hold it for yourself and your elite buddies and not ever share it with the rest of the world. So keep watching the channel. This is one of my second episode. I'm learning as I go. So if you like what you see, stay tuned. I'm going to try to do one of these every week or two. And as soon as it gets a little warmer, it's wintertime now, we're going to get out and really expand this video footage and go out to some of these crazy places, like where my dad saw this portal open up on the side of a mountain here in New Mexico. So we're going to camp out overnight, try to replicate what conditions he was in. It was raining like crazy, lightning everywhere, so it's super dangerous, but I'm going to try it. I want to see what he saw, because I believe my father and I believe Philip. And if you haven't watched that video, check out the short documentary, Portal in the Sandia Mountains. It's on this channel. And let me know what you think. And if you guys have seen anything like it, please reach out to me. Put a comment. Like, share, and subscribe. Like, help this channel blow up. And I promise you, it'll turn into something great. That video, though, that's two men's testimonials about something that happened when they were kids. They were in the Boy Scouts in the mountains. It started raining like crazy. Lightning struck a granite boulder. The lightning flew everywhere, conducted through all of the granite and the quartz crystal around there. And I think it has something to do with piezoelectricity and atmospheric pressure and water, and also opened something up. And I think they just happen to be in the right place at the right time. Either that, or there's something else paranormal that was literally trying to get those boys. And like I said in that video, if they would have been alone, any of them, they might not be here today. There's a lot of people that go missing. Look into the work of Dave Paulides and Missing 411. Watch his documentaries, read his books. It's fascinating how he's broken down a lot of data and from all over the world, but especially our national parks, where people have just vanished into thin air and they didn't find a trace of them ever. So keep in touch, stay tuned. Finding Enoch. I think we're on the road to something cool, and I'll get you the next video soon.